Bitcoin Liberty Live, number 42, the magical number,
Yeah,
the
cuarenta y
answer.
dos. Wait until I get to 420, bro.
For Bitcoin Liberty Live, number 420.
I was thinking maybe we should start inviting guests on.
I invited Travis today because he should be back. I think he's back from El Salvador.
I mean guests, not just Travis.
Hey, some of our regular guests on here that are always on, it's like, hey, well, you want to join?
Yeah. Well, we should invite we should just invite everybody, dude. Like, hey man, we do this
Yeah,
little
why
thing
not?
once a week. Bitcoin Liberty Live, we just kind of jibber jabber about stuff, but I mean, come up with some
I,
stuff.
I could put a link to this in the chat and just say, like one of our episodes, we could say, hey, if you want to join, join. Maybe we have a pool of the three people.
What are you talking about, dude? No. That's madness.
It could get out of hand, but it could be entertaining.
No, that's not a great idea, dude. Like
No.
you don't invite if you're a comedian, you don't invite the crowd up, you invite other comedians.
Well, if there's three people watching, then it's like, hey, hop on, get on the
No,
train.
come on, man. Come on, man. The idea is
Well,
that we get more people watching by having people that people are interested in on the show with us.
well, gold popped and then dropped a bit, but
Gold
yeah,
popped?
gold had churned upwards. There was a run, not a run, I don't know, some kind of a run on London gold market exchange. I think like literally physical gold is getting moved to three main other vaults elsewhere, perhaps in America.
Let's see.
Um,
Well, here, I'm going to share my screen. I'll show you what gold's doing right now. You ready?
yeah,
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah, but
This is gold, baby. Yeah. Woo!
well,
Safe haven.
it popped and dropped.
No, what that is, that's the weekly chart on gold priced in Bitcoin. So let's zoom
Oh
out a little
well,
bit and
yeah.
see what gold's been doing against Bitcoin. Looks
Oh,
awesome. Yeah, that's what I want to put my money in. Heck yeah, brother.
but what
See,
about the intrinsic value?
yeah, well, the intrinsic value back here was you could get 21,000 Bitcoin per ounce, which ain't bad. I mean, you had an ounce of gold back in the day, you could be a multi-gojillionaire right now. But hey, whatever. I want to have my safe haven asset where today you can get Bitcoin, or you can get an ounce of gold for 0.02 Bitcoin.
Huh?
Huh. So it's only had a 21,000% drop since the beginning or whatever. Let's see, what is that actual percentage drop of the godly safe haven asset of gold? I don't even think I can measure it because I can't find. I don't even know what the. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I got to zoom back out to see what that is. Oh, so it's lost 100% against gold.
Well, yeah.
So if you
Back.
had been the super smart guy that was like dumping all your dollars into gold instead of Bitcoin back in 2011, this is your result. Don't be a dum dum.
I want to
Stay
see it in the.
humble. Stack sats. This is bankers' money. That's not for people. That's for banks. The only people that care about gold are banks. Just remember that.
Well, the
Just
banks
remember
have
this
been moving.
chart. There's the gold to Bitcoin chart. That's what you're looking at. So for
Well,
all the gold bugs out there that, the Peter Schiffs of the world, there's your intrinsic value. Big fat
door,
goose egg. Dorks.
a doorstop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous, man.
Well,
Yeah, it's a great doorstop. Awesome
it
for
that
that.
that's the intrinsic value as a bookend or a doorstop or that
Yeah.
feeling like you know, I don't know, you can make jewelry out of it if you got it in your safe.
Well,
Um,
that's the kind of cool thing is like if you have enough Bitcoin, sooner or later. Morning, Johnny. How you doing, brother?
Johnny's back.
All right. How was that trip down to San Diego?
Yeah, family trip. Um, so apparently a lot of gold's been moving out of London into other vaults in America, and these are probably who knows what if they're banks or big players. I didn't look at it, but um, some gold movement. But I think it's what I interpret it as is like, heady stuff is coming or on the horizon, or there's some real concern over big macro stuff, and there's movement to what people think are safe is safe, perhaps. I
Yeah.
don't know, but Bitcoin should erupt on that level, I would think.
Well, I mean, again, I'm gonna do it again. Here's your rate of return on gold.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, right? You can lose all of your value by socking away in the orange metal, the yellow metal. Just say no. Stay humble. Stack sats. I mean, it's like I actually think it's because Peter Schiff is out there giving financial advice all the time. You should buy gold, right? That's
Sure.
financial advice. That is terrible, terrible financial advice. Like astonishingly bad financial advice. Good financial advice is stay humble, stack sats. You know?
Yeah. And that's the thing. We've been through these crawls before where, the 58K era, we're in kind of the 98K era now.
Yeah. Then it'll
I
be
mean, and
the
we're talking,
198K era.
yeah, months apart. Like, was it even 6 months? I guess it's like when it was crawling, it felt like what breaks here? When the break? Well, to go from 58K gang to 98K gang, um, that's that. I no complaints there. Bitcoin just erupts and then it bounces around and then it erupts and then it bounces
Yeah.
around and no,
Yeah, well, I
it's all good.
posted a thing on Twitter a little ways back about a chart, and in 10 years, the peak of the price right now is going to look like you won't even be able to see it on the chart. I mean, so it's just like you just sit on your stack. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. Like, unless you're about to lose everything, like you're going to go be living on the street or something, don't sell your stack, man. And even then, try and find some other way to not sell your stack. But I mean, I don't fault people for, like if you don't own some property or something like that you can live in, well, that's probably a good reason to sell some Bitcoin. It's going to turn out to be the most expensive property you'll ever own. But if you're already an owner of something and you're not beholden to a bank on that property, then you know what? You're doing pretty good. Otherwise, sit on your sats and stay humble. Pretty easy stuff.
Yeah,
What do you think's making the gold
micros.
move, Fritz?
Yeah, I don't want to have to lug around a bunch of heavy stuff if I ever have to move or do something or what transact with it. Hell, nobody can transact with that really very well. So, I mean, there's ways to do it, but oh, what a whole other project to have. So,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
Well, what do you
Bitcoin.
think's making all the big moves in the gold vaults?
I'm not sure who the players are. I feel like it could be big banks or who knows, some sort of big gold whales of some kind. I don't know who they are. Well, I mean, what I heard was that the gold was going to vaults in America. So maybe I don't know,
Yeah.
big players in America could
I
be.
mean, we got plenty of room, right? They're empty.
Yeah, they emptied out after Bretton Woods.
Yeah.
Um, they wanted their gold back, and to a point, we were good for it, and then we weren't, and then it was like, oh, okay, well, this is a different era of fiat. Here we're in,
Yeah.
and it could honestly, my little brain where it's been lately, it could be deep state type players that are um, not Bitcoiners and uh, are prepping for macro doom. I don't know.
Yeah.
Could
I
be
don't
deep
know, man.
state.
It's a pretty weird environment we're in right now. Like my sister texted me the other day and she said, "What do you think about the coup?" And I said, "What coup?"
Yeah.
And then she never wrote me back. But then I started seeing all those like the left leaning headlines about it. And it's like Elon Musk, President Musk, and all this stuff. I'm like, what are these people talking about? And it was so remarkable to me. I started reading their headlines, and I even went and I asked Grok. I was like, "Can you please break down the difference between liberal takes on Elon Musk and Doge and uh, right leaning takes?" And Grok did a pretty good job of breaking it all down. They said, well, the left leaning side is talking more about like the destruction of institutions, and they tend to do a lot more fact checking too, right? Like all the left leaning sides are fact checking, selectively fact checking, but fact checking nonetheless. They're going, well, this thing, like this person got paid, $400 million is not true, and this money technically did go do this, but it wasn't this. And so they said, the Grok said anyway, that the left side is tending to be more, or trying to be more factual, and there's a lot more hyperbole coming from the right side. But the
Hmm.
right side is talking about, like finding corruption. So the whole focus on the right is like, hey, look at all this corruption and waste that we're finding. And on the left, that's completely ignored. They're just going, look what evil Elon Musk is doing to housing and urban development or something. I'm just like, and it reminds me that there's a significant swath of the population that goes, yeah, we need housing and urban development. We need, the education department. We need, I'm going, oh yeah, not everybody looks at the world like I do, where it's like, oh yeah, smash those things to pieces because they are an absolute waste of time and money and resources. And they're just a vacuum and just a place for grift. And, they're like
Yeah.
all slush funds for Congress members and their buddies. That's all those, every
That's
single one of those institutions is.
even as we kind of thought that, at least suspected it before, it's become well apparent now. And
Oh
so
God, dude. Yeah.
before I was on not that I was on the fence, but I was kind of like, there's a lot of good stuff these entities do as well, I'm sure, but the amount of waste, or the amount of money spent to pretend or put a show to do that is gross. And
Oh yeah.
so I'm at a point where it's like, if we need to, if we can't start again unless we've torn it down, well, not that I love just tearing stuff down. I mean, this just the disruption or whatever, but I'd rather we get to a point where we build up clean. And if we're
Yeah.
going to do this again, let's do it right from base principles.
Well, the do it right from base principles is don't create those institutions. I mean, it's like, and I understand the historical issues that they were trying to tackle with things like housing and urban development. But if you really look at what the core thesis behind all of this stuff is someone will come along and go, I've got a great idea. Here's my $1 billion idea. Let's make it so there's some entity that ensures that XYZ happens, right?
Hmm.
And then they never bother to go back and see if it actually worked or if it was a good idea to begin with, or it just becomes like a new Goliath, like Leviathan bureaucratic mess. And
Yeah.
then once the people get embroiled in that, there's a massive incentive amongst government workers to do as little as possible. I mean, like they quite literally wake up, look in the mirror in the morning and go, as little as possible. Can't wait. So, and you can see it. I mean, you are still working in government. I work in government.
Oh,
And just the amount of like, just going, like the place I was at 20 years, this place was just rotten. I mean, they had Sharpie markers on the doors and stuff. I'm going like, what is going on here? It's just trash, all this old stuff piled up. They had junk piles everywhere. I mean, it was just like this whole like 20 years of decay because people would just sit there and go, well, and not care. And so, when I came in there, I was just like, I just smashed my way through it. And I can't tell you how draining that was to just sit there and try and fight all the institutional laziness around it of just like fix this, change this, tidy this up. And the whole way people are just dragging their feet, trying to make it harder. And you're just kind of like, Christ, man. And so by the end of it all, it's like the place was completely transformed.
yeah.
And and even then, it was just like, can't you tell how much better things are now? And they're still just pissed. They just want to have something to bitch about. So it was just like, whatever, man.
Yeah. And I think the mindset around, at least, having both of us worked in the public sector for quite a while, I got used to a lot of certain things about it. And,
Huh.
in the public sector, there are aspects of having a higher burden on transparency, at least in my world, transparency, accountability, the budgeting, the planning around all of that stuff um, takes a little more overhead. You can't just do shit, break shit, move forward, kill that, hire them, fire them. It's, there's a lot more involved with unions and whatever else. And so I get used to a different kind of a pace about it. But at the end of the day, the nature, at least of my work, is the rubber's got to hit the road. Like, what is our mission? What are we doing? And are we
Right.
doing that? And to what extent are our resources going to doing the mission versus what?
Administering the mission.
Some
Yeah.
amount of planning has to happen, but the administration, my radar started to really hone itself around people that I would work adjacent to whose purpose seemed to be like, we're getting stuff done when we have meetings, and we're going to
Right.
have meetings to talk about the next meeting, and there's always another meeting, and I'd go to these meetings going
What are
like,
we
I'm
doing?
kind of busy actually. We got shit to do. There's people
Right.
sitting here or there or need to get arrested or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I have literal stuff to do because
Right.
the community has a crisis, and we're just talking about, especially the worst of it was when it was DEI or equity or
Oh,
um,
dude.
can we get more money out of more grants to do more just because we can?
Right.
And it's like, how about, you know,
How about
the
no?
literal human condition we have in the street right now? I got so intolerant of some of this shit, and I just would not go to meetings, or I just cut out of meetings, or um, I'd get kind of cynical. But man, it creeps. That kind of bureaucracy just creeps into every system where it can because people get comfortable with a certain kind of a job and not being seemingly busy and productive, but not really delivering tangibles.
Right. Well, they're all
That
super process oriented, right? I mean, it's
process.
all about the process. They're just like, well, this is the process we got to follow, and it's like the second you try and deviate from that, man, it's just like you may as well have said, "I'm going to take your kids away," because these people just flip the f out, dude, and
Yeah.
they don't respond well to it. But if you're outcome oriented, if you're objective oriented, and you're like it's an absolute clash. And someone had posted on Twitter a long time ago. They said, there's the Pareto principle applies to government work. Like 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people. And I agree with that 1000%. Like it was just, I mean, I watched it, I looked at it. And that should be reversed, right? In like any healthy organization, that should be the opposite of that. You should have 20% of the people are the laggards and the people that the 80% have to pick up a little bit, right? But the 20% should be a vanishingly small minority that's shrinking at all times. And so tech is trying to kind of tackle that, but they're all enamored of all this, bureaucratic ideology. So they kind of fail on that metric as well. But when you're floating around in a few hundred billion of liquid cash, it's like it's easy to let that kind of stuff slide. It's like when those margins start coming down is when they start getting wrecked.
Elon Musk had, it's been some years, but he was in an interview where he was talking about, I think it was at Tesla or something, but meetings where, like, if a meeting is not valuable to you,
Don't
it would
go.
be unethical for you to stay. Like, just leave. If you're in a meeting and this is not pertinent or efficient, productive for you,
Right.
leave. And
Right.
if you're hosting a meeting and people are dropping out, maybe that's a cue. Um,
That
the
your
the
meeting
polite
sucks.
habit the polite habit is that you stick to it and you make it sound useful in some way that you can muster so that it seems like, yeah, no, this is all okay. It's a normal, like, manners habit. uh, but now that it's hitting, the office space, the Bobs are sitting down like, so what do you do here? And it's created this existential crisis for all these agencies that are like, I I have good customer service. I, I
Right.
I take stuff from the engineers and I give it to the customer, and they're like, okay, well, could the
Can we
engineers
just
tell the
skip
customer?
you? Yeah.
You don't understand. I have meetings. I
Yeah, look
anyway.
how many meetings I had this week. It's just like, oh my god. Yeah, you're spot on, Johnny. It's so inefficient. I mean, I don't know if you've worked in government, but oh my god, man. It's just like you sit there and go, what is
I've worked for big corporations. I've worked for small startups, um, and I've felt the pace of that and kind of the hunger and the cultures of some of that, and then work into when I transitioned over the public sector 24 years ago, I noticed this huge shift in, like, hey, just settle down, slow down, hang out.
all these problems will be
It,
here tomorrow?
they're all it. it all pays the same. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was almost kind of restless, like, so
When can I start
when does
fixing
the
things?
coffee meeting end?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Well, that
um,
was, I mean, that's the thing is like, you work an 8-hour shift, let's say, and you got 4 hours of meetings. You go, this is not the way to do this. But my calendar every single day was just like, oh, I got this meeting and this meeting. And like, well, most of these things, I'm like, why am I here? What am I doing this for? Oh, we're going to this conference this week and we're going to go do this and we're going to go. It's like, dude, you guys are taking 50% of my productive time. So like, yeah, it's just, oh, God. Well, I mean, but even when I was in the corporate world, like, there were just relentless meetings in the corporate world, but they're all time wasting exercises. Like, there's no part of this that's, you know,
there's a time and a place for meetings for sure, but it's like
there are
who
like
needs to be
zero.
there?
What was that company that banned meetings? They just said there's no meetings. You're not allowed to email and you're not allowed to have a meeting. Just banned them.
Oh,
But their
yeah.
efficiency went up like 60% or something. I mean, it was just like, uh,
Yeah, or it's
it
like
was
hop
astonishing.
onto yeah, like some companies, startups and stuff, they'd have Discord running, their
Right. Or
corporate
Slack.
Discord or
Yeah. Yeah.
Slack, and it's like hop on there, churn away, grind, pop in, pop out, but it's not like okay, oh my gosh, I mean, just like last week, I was in one of these meetings where it's a good 10 people of highly paid, reasonably well paid professionals spending a solid hour, and I'm adding up the time of all these people to sit here and kind of wait for their turn and listen to things that are not nearly so pertinent to them.
Right.
And it's a lot of like head nodding, like this is fine. And I'm looking at I shouldn't I shouldn't name even titles, but prominent people in the community sitting there, and it's like I'm sure you have other stuff to do.
Oh,
Like I
yeah.
know I do, but
Yeah.
for them it seems fine, and I'm feeling like I got shit to do. And
Yeah.
I add up the like okay, an hour of each of these people's time. It feels like a whole day of a salary that for this. My
Yeah.
God. So anyway, I love seeing just the little factoids. I know there's elements of propaganda left and right. There's one side is wackadoo coup, the other is condoms to Gaza, and it's like okay, there's lots of storytelling going on, but
Yeah.
RFK Jr. um,
Yeah. That
got
just blows my
approved,
mind, dude.
and
Yeah,
he's
there was
going
some
in.
senator this morning on Twitter was like, "This is what this guy is doing," and the thing she had posted was like one of RFK's first things is to check the efficacy of SSRIs and other mental health drugs. And she said, "We can't have this, and 45 million people with mental health problems are going to have problems." And blah. I'm like, he literally said, "We want to make sure these things are safe and they work." And then
Mm,
someone in the replies to that post posted how much money this goblin got from pharma, and you're like, oh yeah, there you go. So of course she's going to start posting this kind of stuff because it aligns with her financial incentives. She is 100% bought and paid for by the
yeah,
same people she's trying to defend. And you go, man, that's just like every single person sitting in a chair in Washington D.C. So
yeah,
I've seen some really fun little things on Twitter lately, like this is the number of houses that have gone up for sale in the last 40 days or 14 days or whatever it was in DC, and the searches for criminal defense lawyer have gone up like 15 fold and all this stuff. I don't know if there's any validity to it, but I still get a chuckle out of it. I'm just like, yeah, like let's just get, these people are not productive human beings. They are parasites by every definition of the word. They
yeah,
do not produce anything except paper and burdens. Like they are a burden just by their very existence, by taking taxpayer dollars for their livelihood. And then they make it harder for the people paying those taxes to generate money to pay taxes. It's like
mm.
it's this vicious circle of inefficiency that just
When
I
it
yeah,
becomes the world they know, and they see it as this is the process, and this is normal, this is good, or this is how it needs to be. And so to be confronted with a hatchet, RFK, so yeah, one of the criticisms of RFK was like, he doesn't have ties with the pharmaceutical industry and stuff, and it's like that's
yeah,
what we don't want.
yeah, that's a
We
good thing. That's a positive.
Yeah, he's not on the take. He's uh,
Right.
he's going to set up things you may not like, but he's getting to the root of the problem versus like, no, keep the drugs flowing. Like, we got these vaccines, keep the shots going. He's getting down to like what actually happened here through.
Yeah.
I mean, SSRIs have been a problem for, I don't know, decades, and now more
Well, they
recently
help
people are,
people too. I mean, let's
and they
be.
help.
I mean, but that's the whole thing is like there's been this like coordinated effort to funnel money to pharma, just like there's been a coordinated effort to funnel money to defense. Like there's a coordinated effort to funnel money to all sorts of like pet projects for people. And the the one that's going to really open eyes is like when they get to DoD, right? Because that's like such a huge chunk of our budget goes to the Department of Defense, and it's a black hole. Like it's a literal black hole. Like they failed. How many audits have they failed now? Like they just go,
Everyone.
well, we just I don't know. I mean, we lost a few hundred billion this year. I don't know. And there's contractors that came back from Afghanistan and Iraq going like, I was seeing pallets of cash, just millions and millions of dollars on a pallet. Just nobody knows where it's going. Nobody knows what it's for. And then it just disappears. And when you have that kind of prolificate spending on God knows what, like it's just a recipe for fraud, right? I mean, it's if someone just started sending you piles of cash and you were in a foreign country with no oversight, like what do you think's going to happen to that money?
Yeah.
But it's
There
endless,
was
endless
one.
ways.
There was a video I saw that I thought it was from, when they got the keys to areas of government and were rooting around like what is going on here. And was it the Red Cross or some sort of
Charity
ostensibly an aid group?
organization.
And it was a couple of big offices full of boxes full of just cash. And it's like, what is this for? Like when you go somewhere to help and you're giving out just cash here, and I don't
Yeah,
know. So I'm looking. So RFK going in saying like
spot on, Johnny.
RFK Jr. Exactly. Yeah, RFK Jr. Like I'm gonna be just out of the gate cutting thousands of certain employees,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, wow, that's a good start. I mean,
Well, I
it's
mean,
got
yeah, it's like if you look at Musk's track record so far, like he came into Twitter and just immediately, like day one, fired 80% of the staff. Just like you're all done, get out. And everyone's like, "Oh, Twitter's gonna," it's. I have not seen a single change in Twitter's performance, but pre and post Elon Musk. Like it's the exact same platform as far as I'm concerned. They never had customer service. It's always been annoying. So I go, well, what were those 80% of your workforce doing? Like meetings. Like they were just going to meetings and they were posting little Instagram, like, this is my day at Twitter. And, they're going and getting a latte and then they go sit in a meeting for an hour and then they go get some meal at the free food court. And you just go, oh, yeah, you guys were, but it was like overrun with the sort of left leaning types.
yeah.
But getting back to RFK, like, when RFK was running for president, I told my brother-in-law, I was like, "Yeah, I'm 100% voting for this guy," because I saw his initial speech where he announced his candidacy, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of
That was
interesting.
good.
Let's see what this guy's doing." And I sat
Yeah.
there and watched the whole speech. Like I didn't sit there and just wait for clips from John Oliver, wait for clips from Joe Rogan, or wait for clips from whatever pundit happens to be influencing my brain. I just sat and listened to what the guy had to say. For it was like an hour long. And I remember walking away from it going, please God, make sure this guy is safe because this is exactly what we need in America right now, right? I mean, he was just this very thoughtful and conscientious person. And maybe he's making it all up, but it didn't feel like it to me. I just looked at him and went, yeah, this is exactly what we want here. And then the thing that was funny about him is for years and years and years, he was like this huge Democrat like poster boy for taking on corporate corruption and fighting pollution and being an environmentalist and all this kind of stuff. And then the second he announced he was running against Biden, like the entirety of the DNC and all the little liberal aligned politicians and all the liberal media came out and just slaughtered this guy. And I was like, what the hell? But when I told that to my brother in law, he said, oh, that guy's a lunatic. And I was like, how can you say, well, because he thinks this and he does this, and even my nephew was like, oh yeah, that the crazy guy that thinks frogs can be whatever, and I was just like, have you ever actually heard a thing the guy said, like, in context? Oh, he's just crazy. I mean, but they could not hear it. They just, I was
Yeah.
like, and so they started, they're like making fun of me because I was going, you guys have listened to like some comedian on HBO tell you this guy's a lunatic, and now you're just like, this guy's a lunatic,
Yeah.
it's like, wow, man, like, and these are people I consider very smart, very thoughtful people, and yet they are just 100% enmeshed in this bubble of just like outright propaganda and disinformation. It's really, really bizarre. Like, it's bizarro world, man, and it's weird to see people that I care about and love and enjoy talking to and enjoy hanging out. But when it comes to like important opinions, they don't have any. They're just like, what's everyone else say? That's what I believe. Yes, yes, yes.
Well, where a lot
Yeah,
of folks they're living under kind of a Stockholm syndrome of the legacy media propaganda, which clearly we realize has been funded and promoted and manicured by the deep state or you know it's like the more you want to follow the science, the more you're just following the money, um, and so it's I feel like that's starting to pop, or it's popped. We're just not cleared out the remnants yet. But legacy media is becoming less and less relevant at all. It's really more of a comedy show, and we're in all of most people. I think now are really getting their news and information sources from a more distributed bit of noise, but also source lots of noise, but also source level stuff. And if nothing else, at least it's not controlled and maintained, which the deep state has also just said, like, um, if we don't control the news and the narrative, like that is a threat. Like
right,
people can just say anything,
right,
it has to come from our central authority ministry of knowledge. And
right,
I think we're done with that. So paradigm shifting, and it's those who are freaking out, few that I know personally in my family, whatnot, freaking out about it. And it's like, I'm sorry. It's like, I don't know how to cure Stockholm syndrome.
right. Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, that's what Johnny said was pretty funny. I think that's, yeah, adult playhouse. That's funny. But, with the, I mean, I think Stockholm syndrome might be too generous to them. I mean, there's an innate
they're
human
complicit.
trait that says, hey, we need to be part of the group, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's always been that select group of people, the ones that go and stand in front of the crowd and fight the lion, right? Like, that's throughout history. Those are the only people that have really mattered in history. Like, you'll never be the one who's remembered for hiding in the middle of the pack. You get to live, but that's there's a lot of safety in staying with the group, right? And identifying with your group and being part of that group identity. And the problem with the decentralized media is that there's decentralized media on the other side as well. And they are saying some just outlandish shit. Like, I mean, both sides are saying outlandish shit. And so I think while there's also the decline in legacy media, there's also an increasing issue of like discovering ground truth, right? And figuring out like what is actually real here. And most of the time
Mhm.
it's somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, there's not always, but a substantial portion of the time you're going to find some truth in both sides, but neither side will acknowledge the other, and neither side will entertain any of that stuff. I mean, the discourse is absolutely collapsed, so there's no communication between the two poles, and it's really difficult to see like a way forward through this. But right now, like when I'm looking at my sister and my brother-in-law and they're talking about the coup and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, you realize like the majority of Americans are on board with this. And by the majority, I mean it's a slim majority. It's probably 60% or something like that. But I think if you just walked down the street and did a man in the street interview thing and said, "Hey, do you think we should spend taxpayer dollars on America first, and then if we have some left over, we should go help other countries?" I think almost universally you're going to get, "Well, yeah, of course." But as soon as it comes to like the liberal side pet projects, like they're going to come out of the woodworks. If Trump and Musk and all those people stay true to their word and actually go after DOD and DOE, like the Department of Energy and all that kind of stuff, I think what you're going to see is the exact same thing from the Republican side, where they're going
Yeah.
to start coming out and going, "Oh, Elon Musk is a tyrant and this," and I mean, I don't know what sort of thing they're going to what. I mean, they're going to go and do a focus group and figure out what's the meanest thing we can say about Elon Musk that's going to attract our Republican base. But it's coming 100%, which
Yeah.
is why I'm a little dubious about how deep they're going to start digging into DOD. But Trump said it the other day, I'm coming after you guys. And if he really does and really starts uncorking that, man, it's going to be just glorious, like
Oh my goodness, it's a crazy time. And
yeah, it's awesome, man. I'm kind of digging this.
for some people to recover, I mean, some will die miserable and just believe that it was all doom. But it's sort of like stop and look around at your life and pay attention. If things just get better and better between Bitcoin, or maybe we can steer the Titanic here with the government debt, or who knows. But say things just kind of get better or less worse. Are you going
Right.
to hold on to this misery, or are you going to? I'm not saying if you can't beat them, join them. I'm just saying, can you let go of whatever toxicity you have built up from where?
Right.
Like, move on and realize that these people complaining that I know, their lives are great. They're doing
Yeah.
great. They're
Oh yeah.
fine. They're unaffected. You're well unaffected. What you're seeing and hooked on is the propaganda machine. So it's like, let it go. Let it go.
Yeah.
They may
That's
heal
a great
eventually,
point.
but I feel like it's going to take decades. Um,
Maybe. Well, like when East Germany collapsed, right? Like there was a great thing. I mean, it was a movie, but it was based on historical events, and there was this Stasi member that was going around spying on people and stuff like that. And then when East Germany finally collapsed, that Stasi guy, super powerful guy, had a lot of influence over people's lives and the ability to censor. And, like in East Germany, family members would rat each other out. I mean, it was
oh
like such
yeah,
a nasty, nasty sort of kind of exactly like what they were trying to create here, like I mean,
rat
you
on.
look at how many people ratted on their neighbors during COVID and stuff like that, and you go, "Yeah, you're the rats. You're the little like scurrying little rats that are going to go around and say, oh, my neighbor is doing X. They had a party," you know. But they encourage that kind of behavior because it's a great tool of control, right? Like when the entire society is scared of each other and scared of reporting, like nobody will say anything. And that's what all that language and political correctness and DEI and all these pronouns and all that's all that's about is just, it's a backdoor method of regulating people without having to have all the guns pointed at them all the time.
Yeah,
But the guy in the movie, once the East Germany went away, that super powerful Stasi guy ended up being like a postman or something like that. And the guy saw the guy in the street and said, "You tried to ruin my life, and look at you now. Like, why was I ever afraid of you? You're just
you're
a
just another
pathetic.
guy.
You're just some schmuck, you know." And if it wasn't for that state apparatus behind you, you would have always been a schmuck. And all of these people right now that are like pining for power and using things like the civil rights movement for power and using DEI for power and using BLM for power. I mean, it's all power grabs. They're all like, hey, this can be divisive and I can get power and money out of this. But they're all schmucks. I mean, like at the end of the day, if you look at them and look at the quality of that human being, you go, oh, you're just a rabble rouser and a schmuck. Why was I ever afraid of you? Why was I ever
Mhm.
worried about what you're doing?
Yeah,
And so, to your point, though, like as you said that, like these people are doing great. The people that are freaking out the most are people that are like tend to be like middle to upper middle class,
exactly.
white. They have all their privilege that they're so they want everyone else to give up their privilege except for them. Like I'm not
Yeah,
privileged. Or they say it out loud and they'll do like those. What were those retarded things they were doing at Thanksgiving? Remember a couple of years back, like I want to honor this. Like here's a cake that I made to honor the Native Americans that gave up their land so I could have this glorious feast. And it's like, well, if you're that worried about it, just give the land back. Like pretty simple solution. Like making a cake is not going to fix any historical wrongs, but it sure does a lot of virtue signaling around the table at Thanksgiving time or whatever. And it
yeah.
just, I don't know,
The
man.
grappling with their sense of guilt over their perhaps real privilege, but in a way that is really about social control mechanisms more than any legitimate, like, making a difference in the world. It's like, how about, you know, I would feel sorry the most. I think about the mental health of the kids, and kids growing up in families where the parents are deranged, and like, oh, you know, the weather's going to boil the oceans and everything's getting bad. No, Trump and Trump and the kids just want to like grow up and live a life and learn stuff and have fun. And I'll feel sorry for kids in families where it's deranged. And even this last Thanksgiving and Thanksgivings before through COVID, it was just we just bailed on one Thanksgiving trip we were going to do because there was all this anguish over who was vaccinated or not. And it's like, if this is our concern about getting together as a family, we're
Yeah.
out. And
Right.
my mom all freaked out about it, but it was like, it's no skin off my back. I mean, I, if this is going to be miserable for you, we don't need that. We're fine. We're good.
Yeah.
So I just cancel the cancel culture.
Yeah.
Um,
Real quick, like I just posted to Johnny, I said spot on, but it said
yeah,
only Rumble Studio participants can see this. Like, how do I post to YouTube?
click
Do
the
you know?
drop down. There's a drop down to the left of your messaging thing where you can select who you're writing to.
I have no
It
drop
should-
down, sir. Yeah, whatever. Johnny, I said spot on. I'll figure out the thing later. I mean, we're still working out the kinks.
I
Bunch
can
of
select different forms. Um,
old farts here trying to figure out technology. But
Technology.
yeah,
Um,
but I mean, I had a similar experience during the COVID thing, right? And the funny thing was, is like I had a frontline seat to that whole madness because I was working in the prison, right? And thanks, Fritz, appreciate it. Um, and so, like when I was watching these COVID regulations come down, and the thing is when there's like some pandemic coming around, and I was pretty familiar with the Spanish flu, and I was there was always, I mean, since I was in high school, I remember reading about the Spanish flu, going, that sounds awful. Like I don't want to have anything to do with that. And so when you start seeing this like official narrative coming out about here's the new Spanish flu, and it's just like, oh God, this is kind of scary. But I was working in a prison, so I was an essential worker, and then our prison decided, like, hey, we have one of the best medical facilities in the entire state. Let's just send all the COVID positive patients to that facility that I was working at. And I was like, okay, this doesn't sound great. And sure enough, like something like there's people could come up and self identify as being vulnerable to COVID. And if you know anything about working in a prison, most people that work in prisons are fat and in really bad shape. They're
Eating
alcoholics.
garbage.
They're eating garbage all day. There's it's not like a, a population that is like super fit and all about health, and I mean there's a handful, but most of those guys are on steroids, right?
Some guys
So you got
work
the
out.
steroid guys, and then you've got everyone else, which is just fat and can barely walk up the stairs, and so literally like 60 or 70% of the staff were just like, I'm vulnerable. And since I was kind of a new guy on the floor, they're like, oh, you haven't self-identified as vulnerable, go down to the COVID unit. I was like, what are you talking about? And so they're handing out these like masks, quote unquote. These things were like quite literally made by the inmates, and it was like two pieces of elastic with like some old jeans material or like some old underwear or something, and you're just like, okay. And I had to wear it, and the thing is, it was too small, so my ears were like this all day for like 8 hours straight. And then when the transport guys would show up, because they're bringing all these people in from all around the state, it's like Bubble Boy got out of the damn truck, dude. It's like they're going there and they got these big sprayers and they're spraying down the entire cab of the truck and the inside of the truck. And these guys were just like these big bubble hats with tubes on them and all this shit, and like the yellow suit. And they're handing this guy off to me, and I'm like standing there with a piece of underwear on my face, like, I guess I got it from here, dude. Thanks. And just watching like the difference between the reality of what is happening on the ground and what was being portrayed in the media and all this kind of stuff. And we're having to implement all these crazy things, like if someone's in a housing area, they have to remain masked at all times, right? Like in the
Mhm.
dormitories. But if they're in the day room, they can pull their mask down. And I'm like, well, the day room is separated by a waist high wall and 3 feet of airspace. So I'm like, and the people that lived there would come up and go, this is retarded. Why do I have to? I can sit right next to the wall on this side of the day room. I have to have my mask. I walk and I cross the 6 inches width of wall and stand on the other side of it, I can pull this thing down. And I went, yep, that's the rules.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
mask rules and wearing masks. It's a really good uh, mind control device and symbolic, and you can see it and you can feel it, and it's like um, uh, conformity and a constant reminder that this is real, that this is all real. And yeah, there'd be times during the mask era where it'd be like all these rules, and at my workplace, like, thou shalt wear the mask. So if
Yeah.
you can't cover your cough, or if you can't, when you're sick, and do what you need to do. And instead of the air coming out, it's kind of blowing to the sides or kind of wafting around less. Um, I'd be wearing masks, they'd be wearing masks, whatever, and it's like I can smell you. Like,
Right.
I don't know what this is all doing, but if I can smell you, whatever this air is what it is, and the rest is mind control.
Well, I
Um,
mean, I would say masks do work on some level because otherwise they wouldn't have surgeons wear masks, right? Like surgeons would just sit there just mouth breathing all over you. I guarantee you don't want to be in surgery without a masked surgeon, right?
well,
Because
if you're leaning over, I mean, I'll be talking during the podcast, and like if the spittle comes out, like, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, you don't
I
want to
mean,
drop
there's
stuff.
they determined a long, long time ago, like, hey, we have way fewer people die when we put this little piece of cloth over our mask while we're cutting them open. So
Sure.
to say that they're irrelevant, I don't think is quite fair. And yet, if you look at like the reality and what I think they knew about that virus is they're like, well, that mask isn't going to stop boo.
Yeah.
And never mind like mask compliance and how you wear it and when you wear it and what you touch and all this kind of stuff. Like I had to get a training on how to put my N95 on, and it's not trivial. Like there's certain rules you have to follow to make that work, right? And nobody would do. I mean, you got the people here and doing this, and they got the mask on their head and all this kind of stuff, and you're just like, and then they came out with the face shield thing. I'm like, this is just retarded. So like there's a reason people in Asia have been wearing masks routinely for the last 50 years, and it's because, well, it helps cut down on the stuff you're breathing in and the stuff you're breathing
If you're
out.
on a subway and you're sick, and like I'll see some people out and about and they've got a mask on. It's like, well, maybe they're sick, and I try not to judge it. I see other people driving alone in their own car, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, we're still deranged.
yeah. I mean,
But anyway,
that's the lunacy of it all, right? And then that's part of the problem is like they pushed all that and they created such nonsense narrative around what that is and what it's for and why you should do it and why you shouldn't do it and all that kind of stuff, that now you're like a social pariah if you're walking around with a mask on, right? And there are certain situations where it might be a good idea for you to be wearing a mask, or where it might be beneficial to you to wear a mask. So they've utterly destroyed common sense
yeah,
in the pursuit of like a political agenda, right? So
yeah.
I can't wait until they uncork all that and all those documents start coming out. I mean, I think
Oh,
it's pretty
yeah,
telling, like, that pardon they gave to what's his face going back 14 years, and you go, oh, when was that? Oh, right when they banned, gain of function research in the United States. Hmm.
yeah. So
Huh.
there's that.
Yeah.
If RFK getting into the NIH, and who knows, you can poke at the World Health Organization. If we need to have, okay, pardoned or not, if we at least have hearings or a tribunal over what in the hell happened here, and let's hear it from Fauci. Like, yeah, 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 you're pardoned, so you're immune from. You can just tell the truth, right? Just, we're going to hammer you. I want to know. They're getting into. I think Doge is in the IRS now too.
Oh
Recently,
God.
yeah.
And the IRS, get rid of those clowns. Hell yeah.
So um, you'll have opinions about this, but some banter I'd seen on Twitter was like, "Well, who's filing their taxes this year?" And um,
Me.
like, I'm still avoiding any trouble I can, but yeah, I wonder, like, IRS, and now what, the ERS, External Revenue Service,
Yeah.
some stuff's going to be changing, so I'm kind of excited about it, but I
Well,
don't know what
once
the.
they uncover the waste and fraud in IRS, that's going to be pretty eye opening as well. Yeah, you're
Oh,
spot on, Johnny. I mean, the micron level for like antiviral masking is, it's in a broad sense, like if there's a bunch of people walking around with the flu and you wear a mask, your likelihood of catching the flu goes down somewhat, right? I mean, there's a marginal utility value to wearing a mask. There's a huge utility value in wearing a mask if you're in a surgical setting, right? So there's levels to this stuff. If you're in a big crowd and everybody's got the flu, like they do like they've been doing in Hong Kong, like I remember seeing the East Asians, and especially when they come to the U.S., they just walk around with a mask on like all the time. Just and you're like, oh, okay, whatever. It's just like an Asian thing. Um, and a lot of it's probably psychological, but it certainly helps filter what's coming into your face, right? And it also does a nice thing of discouraging you from touching your face around here, which is like one of the primary vectors of
Yeah,
getting these little
touching
bugs in
yourself,
your, because I'm a guy who's always like fiddling with my face, and that's why I carry
picking
hand
your nose.
sanitizer around, because I like rubbing my eyes and scratching my nose and sticking my fingers in my mouth because I'm just like a baboon apparently. But I do recall, because that was the thing, is like I worked in a COVID isolation unit during the day, and then I'd go to the ICU where there's everybody was dying of COVID. I was in there as well. And, like wearing the mask and all that kind of stuff. I never once, knock wood, caught COVID during that whole time. I caught COVID afterwards, but during, or either that, or if I got it, I didn't know, right? But I never got sick. Like I never had a cold. I never got the flu. Like everything just sort of went away when I was masking, washing my hands all the time, not touching my face all the time, and being careful about my hygiene. I was like, oh yeah, that kind of worked, So, but you're absolutely right, man. I mean, there was no like that. Those masks could not filter micron level viruses like what was floating around in the air. And once they found out that it was airborne and super transmissible and super, super infectious, like all that kind of stuff went out the window. But so did all the like social distancing. I mean, that, when they found out, oh, he just made that up on the fly, just like, yeah, how about 6 feet,
It's
right? Like, I mean,
something. Yeah.
and then putting the, shields up and the stickers on the floor and all this crazy shit. And it was just like, Christ almighty, what is going on here? So it was all madness. I mean, they were just peddling madness, but that's, if you look at things like, hey, there's a big, huge environmental catastrophe coming. Like there's a legitimate, dangerous virus coming. Like everything they did was the exact opposite of what they should have been doing for all of that. The public messaging was all screwed up. The mandates were all screwed up. The lockdowns were all screwed up. Like all of it was just 100% backwards and wrong. And I think it will probably come out about what that was really truly all about. And it may well just be like, hey, this is a control tactic, but that's what they've been trying to do for 50 years, is like turn the entire world into East Germany, so it's
Yeah. I I got pretty strongly sick a couple of times the last couple of winters. Never tested myself. Was it COVID or not? I don't know. If I had not heard anything about anything, it could have been another winter for me. Having kids, going to preschool or whatever, I wouldn't have known. It would have been like, well, yeah, I got pretty sick and I got better.
yeah,
Now maybe I'm privileged in my own health or whatever. There's the whole underlying health factor to all this,
right.
numbers wise, death rates, all that. Not to get into it, I'm wondering if this podcast is going to get marked for topics. Like
Whatever.
YouTube in the past had an issue with the fact that we talked about it some way. But
Well, I think I had mentioned the Joe Rogan treatment, and they was like, you can't say that. We're just talking about stuff. I mean, we'll see what
yeah,
happens.
you were referencing things that RFK Jr. had said about COVID at the time, and
Right.
they banned it for
Medical
like
misinformation.
us
Yeah.
espousing something. You were literally citing what RFK Jr. had said about it,
Right.
and
I mean,
anyway,
but
yeah,
that's yeah. I mean, I think it's more about like controlling speech. Like that was the big thing that came out of that whole thing, is like we're going to clamp down on free speech, and that yeah, that was catastrophically bad. I mean, though everything they did was anti good governance, good planning, statesmanship, constitutionalism, everything. I mean, it was just it was an exercise in. I think it was the last gasp of the liberals, though, dude. I really do. Like, I think it's going to take them 40 or 50 years to recover from this
oh
catastrophe
yeah,
that they brought upon themselves, trying to bring about the world of East Germany to everybody.
yeah. Coming out of it, I mean, hopefully, if we had to learn the hard way, that we learned, and it's like never again do we approach these the way we used to think we could get away with.
Yeah.
MicroStrategy changed their name to Strategy, I guess.
Yeah,
Kind of an, I mean, makes sense. They're not micro anymore. They're they're getting big.
maybe you should
I
have
think
changed it to MicroStrategy. I don't know. Someone had said like they're thinking about making a bank, and being MicroStrategy Bank doesn't sound as good as Strategy Bank. I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't know, or maybe they just didn't want to be confused with Microsoft anymore. Who knows? Or I mean, that was
Maxi
a throwback
Maxi.
to the '90s when Sailor was shitcoining tech stocks, But
Yeah,
like, did you ever see those old headlines from Sailor where it's like, hotshot tech guy loses like $2 billion in a week or something like that?
yeah.
Like as his shit tech company just
Before he found Bitcoin. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But I mean that company was just a zero for so long, dude. 20 years of just vapor, and then like, hey,
he
Bitcoin
figured
works.
it out.
Yeah,
David Sachs said that uh, NFTs and meme coins are collectibles, not securities. Uh, I find it all a little cringe. I'm there's some rumbling going on over some change over the initial executive order about crypto committee and it sounds like there's infighting over the crypto influencers in the executive branch, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, I know that all roads lead to Bitcoin.
yeah. But Orange Man is a shitcoiner. Let's not forget that. So
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
I
he's
hope.
like shitcoiner in chief right now. So
Yeah, even like Javier Milei issued like a shit coin, and it was like, really? We all gotta. I mean, okay, yes, you'll make money. You will make money
yeah,
in fiat, and but like, is this something you gotta do before you like get over that and say, okay, I took all my reapings and rug pull and I put it in Bitcoin, and now I'm a Mexi.
right.
I don't know,
Well, that's kind
but
of how that path goes, right? I mean, like it's not lost on me that Vitalik and all those ETH clowns, they sold their ETH tokens for Bitcoin, right? So it's like
yeah.
you go, oh, well, why would you sell for Bitcoin? Why don't you just sell it for cash?
Why
And I
aren't you
think they
buying
were,
as much ETH as you can?
yeah, exactly. Like, but they if you can pre-mine and then get Bitcoin for free, like that's it's a scam. Like you're hustling people, but you sure increased your Bitcoin stack. So it's just watching this clown show unfold, like NFTs and all this kind of crap. You're 100% right. It all comes back to Bitcoin. It's just watching people trip themselves up on the way. You just go, well, I mean, try and help them as much as you can, but the narrative against you is so hard. It's like, well, but I can make all this money off shitcoining and I can do all this off shitcoining. Look at all these people that I really like and believe in shitcoining. I look at all the money they made. And I'm like, well, yeah, because they're insiders, dude. Like they got your tokens at like 14 cents. And when you could buy it, the cheapest you could buy it was like $2. So like Solana, the Solana insiders got Solana for like I think it was literally 12 cents, right? When it went to the public sale, like they had already 10x their money. All the insiders had already had a 10x by the time any retail buyer could buy it. And then when it moons like $200 a coin or something like that, like those insiders are just flamingly rich off of retail speculators. But the
Yeah.
whole time they're pushing the narrative like, yeah, this is the next big, database. Oh, look at our database. Our database is so good. But, the never mind that network has gone down like 15 times or something like that and, they can just restart it and I mean it's a scam. Like tip to tail hustle to make insiders rich. And that's every single crypto token, NFT, whatever. All those NFTs were securities and remain securities because they convinced people to buy a JPEG at inflated rates. I mean, something they can create out of thin air, and then with the expectation of profit, they sell it to somebody else. So it's a security under securities law. But I mean, at this point, I'm like, well, we should just ban securities law because if we're gonna allow unlimited shit coining in this country, we should just allow unlimited investment scams in this country because that's all we're gonna have, right?
That's where we're at. It seems like. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, I mean, they've just now they've got an institutional pass on scamming people. So it's like a end run around securities law.
Yeah.
But the second you allow the tokenization of everything, then every Wall Street firm in America is going to go, oh, we don't sell stocks anymore. We sell crypto tokens, you know. So
Right.
you can own a piece of this company without actually owning the company because we're on the blockchain now. And it's like, so they're going to just start rugging people left, right, and center with, I mean, it's just, it's naked scamming that's now getting an institutional veneer. It's kind of gross.
Yeah, and I mean, like thumbing their nose at any securities law. I mean, Dave Portnoy, the Barstool Sports guy, he created. I mean, literally a coin called Jail Stool, sort
Yeah.
of thumbing his nose at, like, put me in jail for creating a scam, which you know got a $250 million market cap, I think it was. Um,
Yeah.
just so scammy. It's just like, the Winklevoss twins tried to Bitcoin him years ago, and people have been trying to get him to understand Bitcoin for a long time, and he keeps playing these games around, being curious about it. Creates a shit coin. He'll probably put his earnings into Bitcoin, but
Maybe.
uh, I don't know. It's just a scam. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so cringy, and I hate to have people that are trying to learn about Bitcoin still continually distracted by now a huge amount of noise over don't miss out, FOMO in, don't be a minute late because it roared and it popped, and catch one when you can.
Yeah.
It's such a mess.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Fiat really is the ultimate pre-mine scam coin.
when I think of so I one of my responses to the coup going on to family, thinking of my maybe imperfect analogy of the Stockholm syndrome. Uh, the fiat system we live and breathe in mostly is like having Stockholm syndrome, where it's like we're told, like, no, no, the U.S. dollar, this is it. We cannot upend systems around how this works. This is the way it works. This is the only way it can work. Inflation, a little inflation's good. It's like the fiat scam. It's like I feel like people I know who live under this Stockholm syndrome of fiat. It's another kind of barrier of entry to them mentally to get into Bitcoin, because they fall into the intrinsic value, based on vapor. No, there needs to be a central authority to help control and issue it and manage it and regulate it. Blah blah blah. So anyway, I go back to my Stockholm syndrome about living in a fiat world that, um, I think all that is changing as well. I think
I
for
hope
some
so.
people, crypto may be, for some people, a way that they break their mind free of fiat,
Yeah.
into another
Yeah.
vapor fiat. But um, maybe eventually, yeah, if some people break loose clumsily or get wrecked, eventually all roads lead to Bitcoin. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the sort of ongoing hope, right? And Robin Sayre was on a great podcast, the Bitcoin Libertarian. He's a guy that lives out in Hong Kong. He had a great little discussion about it, and I really appreciate Robin for saying it because he's like, we have to approach people with love and understanding, and not everybody was a Bitcoiner from birth, right? Like for every Antonopoulos, there's like thousands of Bitcoiners that didn't get it that soon, like Max Kaiser got it early. Andrea Antonopoulos got it early. A lot of those guys picked it up, figured it out, and went, "Yeah, this is the right way to go." I was right there in 2010, and I went, "This is a scam," and I left it for a decade. So it's, I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to those early pioneers that could kind of see clearer than I could, and I was shitcoining for a while too. I mean, it's easy to buy into that hype. So I want to give people a lot of like patience as much as I can. I mean, there's that part of me that still goes, well, just have fun staying poor, dumbass. And especially when people like insulting you to your face and telling you what a moron you are for doing this, and oh, that's and rolling their eyes at you and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, I get all that. I did the exact same thing to people that would say that to me in the past, right? And I get that you sound like a lunatic when you're like, Bitcoin's going to $1 million. Like, like to someone who's not familiar with the entirety of what Bitcoin is and what it means, like it's real easy to look at someone like that and go, oh, what an idiot. So I think it's important for us to try and retain that sort of humanity to things, and just go, all right, well, I get it. I get where you're coming from. I used to think the same thing, and now I don't, So I encourage you to learn more about it. But, it's not going to be for everybody. By the time it is for everybody, they will just be using it just like the internet, right? Like, because I had all kinds of people making fun of me when I was getting into the internet, like, "Oh, you're an idiot. Oh, that thing. The internet, is
Don't
that
you have a
still
fax
around?"
machine?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, people were just relentless and mocking of my interest in networking technology and stuff like that back in the day, and like what the potential is for that. And I even told my buddy who worked at Warner Music, I was like, "You realize your whole business model is about to go out the window, right?" "Oh, that'll never happen because of blah, 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 blah." And then it was like 10 years later when he was working, I think, as a, selling insurance or something like that. I'm like, "Hmm." But then I was telling my other buddy who worked in the film industry, I was like, "You realize your whole business model is about to go out the window, right?" Like, because he worked in home video. "Oh, that's never gonna. They can't do this." And I mean, just all like reasons. Here's all the reasons why you're an idiot, and I know what I'm doing. And now that guy works at Farmers. I think he's selling insurance too, right? So you just go, well, I'm trying to tell you. And so, like, all the people that are laughing at me right now, going Bitcoin this, Bitcoin that, I'm like, well, I'll see you in 10 years. Just like when you're sitting there going like, "Oh, how come you didn't tell me about Bitcoin?" Or, but they won't even acknowledge it. They won't even, like my buddy in the music industry, when I say, "Yeah, you remember when I was telling you?" And go, "Oh, that never happened." I mean, it's just like they just memory hole it, right? So everybody that's shitting on Bitcoin right now is going to memory hole the time that they were shitting on Bitcoin, and they're just going to go, "Oh, I always knew about Bitcoin," and I'll go, "Okay, cool, whatever." I mean, I
Yeah.
have a lot more than you do, so we'll see what happens. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the mental enslavement complex, exactly.
Yeah, Johnny, I've been trying to comment back, but I don't see him popping up. So I don't know if you can see I've responded. But anyway, yeah, good comments. People's memories and kind of view on history. It's like we re-rationalize all the time on what it all was and what we thought even at the time and how we, you know, reconciling our present and what we think is the future, and we reframe the past so that it makes sense. And
Right,
so like, oh, almost like to protect your ego. It's like I was never that crazy. I can look back at myself if I stop and think about it, sort of like missing Bitcoin. For me, it was more like 2013, or it was Mount Gox era, I guess, and someone who mentioned it to me and was telling me about it, and I framed it as like, what is this, like an online gaming token or just a token for what? And I missed it. I was just like, I don't gamble, I don't play games, I don't need
right.
tokens in my life. And I just totally dismissed it for another, what, 7 8 years.
Yeah,
And in hindsight, I can look at I can reconcile my past and remember myself like when I was in my 20s, and I'm like, I got shit figured out. I'm an adult. I know how things work. And then in my
right,
30s, yeah, I got stuff figured out now. Oh, when I was in my 20s, oh, how young I was. And in my 40s, looking at my 30s in my 20s going, well, I was clearly still a kid. If only
right,
I knew then what I know now, and I'm an adult now.
right.
And so like I feel it now. I can look back on even just 5 years ago and say, I'm continually changing, and I'm not threatened by that. It's just interesting how certain I was about things years ago
Yeah.
and how little I was aware
Really
of other
truly
stuff.
understood. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. I mean, and that's, like, I think back on it, like if I had just somehow taken my Bitcoin, forgotten about it, and then remembered how to get to it, uh, I, I mean, you just flash forward and go, God, I would have been like, I mean, it's easy for me to get caught up in that, like, oh my God, I'd be like a gajillionaire right now. But, like I also have enough to know that like I just wasn't that person. But I also had a lot of benefits because I was a gold bug back then too, right? So like I was already talking about like fiat problems and inflation and hyperinflation and all this kind of stuff. Back in like the 90s and 2000s, I was telling people like, okay, I was chicken littling everywhere, just telling people you got to buy gold, you got to buy gold. And now I'm like, looking back on that, and I realize it's kind of silly now, because now that I understand how gold markets are and how manipulated all that stuff is and how much paper issuance there is and just the gross imbalance in the gold markets, like you'd have to be almost a lunatic to hold that stuff in any great quantity, right?
Right.
Um, but looking back on it and thinking about it, and then realizing like, well, that definitely primed me for Bitcoin. Like there was a reason I was getting into Bitcoin in 2010 is because I was already looking at that world going, yeah. And I just evaluated Bitcoin poorly. That's all, I mean, so
Yeah.
when I try and forgive myself for those, Bitcoin mistakes early on, I go, I just didn't evaluate it close enough. I just didn't have enough wherewithal to look deeper because I had such a firm belief in gold and silver, right?
Hmm.
And so now to be able to come out of that on the other side, like, like I would have been, I was a huge fan of Peter Schiff back in the 90s, and I'm still a fan of Peter Schiff. I mean, he says the right things. He's like morally and ethically aligned, I think, with the Bitcoin ethos. He's just really, really, really still poorly evaluating Bitcoin, and he just cannot let it go. And that, I mean, his whole
I'm
business
waiting.
is built around selling gold. So,
I'm waiting for. I've actually. I feel like I get these little hints of softening on being totally anti-Bitcoin from him. Maybe it's just him not fighting so crazy, but I wonder when does the moment come when he concedes something about it. It's just. It's like it's got to be coming. It's kind of
I
funny,
don't
but
think he can, dude. Like, I just don't think he
yeah,
can. Like, I think he's incapable of it. I mean, he is very much fiat mind control, like Johnny's saying.
yeah.
Like, he's just he's in the matrix and he doesn't want to leave. He's just like, I just want to taste the steak. Like he just doesn't. He can see the other side of it and is choosing to ignore it.
Yeah, and
Uh,
for him, gold was the red pill for him, but he's stuck in that just another layer of that matrix.
right,
Yeah, you're
right.
spot on, Johnny. I commented, but it's my comments aren't working right now. Who knows? I don't know why they
Let me
stopped
see.
working.
I mean, I
But
don't have to wait. Let me see. Woot.
try commenting.
Yeah, mine
Yeah.
just goes
Oh, there
rumble.
you go. Well, mine aren't coming through.
Well,
Um,
I came through, but only to rumble, so I can't change the rumble thing. We're gonna have to figure out some settings offline, sir.
yeah.
On
Um,
that note, I think we're probably getting close to our time here, aren't we?
it's been an hour and 50 minutes. Yeah, exactly. He's on the right track. So for me in the late 90s, it was Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, where I was just starting to see like, where does our money come from? And I was, I was in the tech industry and doing stocks and looking at, your options, and everybody was into some of the .com era of everything about that. And when that bubble popped and other stuff, and I started to zoom out and go, what is this whole game? And I was a little cynical about it. And the Creature from Jekyll Island got me down to money. What is money? And that planted a seed where for me for a while, yeah, it was like, well, gold. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe gold is it, yeah, geez, because Edward Griffin is into gold.
Right.
And so I was there for a long time. So that prepped me, got my mind ready later for what was Bitcoin. So I'm thankful for the path I did have to navigate, imperfect as it was, but everybody's got to follow a path.
Right.
When yeah, I just feel like um, I'm thankful for where I'm at now with it all, but I'm amazed by guys like Kaiser, Antonopoulos, some of those guys, and Satoshi. I mean, hell, the cypherpunks early on, they understood a new world that was coming, the hijinks and bullshit that had happened, the need for technology to protect us and to empower us and to be used for good. And how do we do that? Even in the face of easily attackable and vulnerable situation for them, stuff from the NSA or the IRS or just the Federal Reserve and government itself and anyone you talk to, you're a freak. And yet they were in there talking to empty rooms, evangelizing it, and technically, you know, genius. And with Max Kaiser, he puts on part of the show about it, but it's the energy.
Right.
I am just amazed by these guys early on who had the courage and the fortitude to just stick to it. And wow, kudos to them.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
they
yeah.
helped. They
Huge.
orange pilled me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great guys, you know. So I don't know, man. I think, you know, all like you said, all roads lead to Bitcoin, and sooner or later that's going to be true for everybody, right? So uh, it's just how long is it going to take for them to get it, figure it out, get there?
Yeah,
And so I hope for most people it's quicker than what's been, but you know, it is what
we
it
are
is.
being we are being unburdened by what has been, and
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
I think it's not like you're not late to the internet, but the internet's here. So like
right.
you're gonna get on it, or you're gonna hold on to your fax machine. So
Yeah,
hopefully nobody's has to be later than they needed to be. But
yeah. Well, we'll get there. I mean, I'm looking. I'm still super bullish on the future, man. I think, yeah, spot on, Johnny. They're absolutely just super amazing people, amazing
I
human beings.
watch I watch old videos of them from a decade ago, and I'm just
Yeah,
like, wow,
you guys
these.
really got it.
Oh
Like
my.
early.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
such remarkable people. I mean,
Awesome.
I'm hoping like once my super secret device is released in 2 weeks, I'm actually hoping I can sponsor a hole at the El Salvador golf tournament and maybe get to meet Max in person. Like that would be epic. I remember when that guy followed me on Twitter. Like my brain just popped, dude. I was like, "Oh my god, Max Kaiser's following me!" On, like it was such a huge honor. I mean, he follows thousands of people, but yeah, it felt
Yes.
great.
Well,
So
Johnny's been waiting to hear about your super secret device. Any week now, then a couple of weeks. Like once it's out, I'll be shilling it left and right.
yeah,
It's stuff that like reply guy, quick stuff on Max Kaiser and others, and then get connecting with who knows podcasters and whatnot. When you can like say, hey, here's this thing, it's great.
yeah, I can just hold it up
You're
and go.
you're not even you're not even shilling. You're just saying this is a useful tool for people.
Yeah.
Um, Bitcoiners, check it out. It's just something new. And
I think
yes,
it's like all kinds of people, even beyond the Bitcoin crew, right? Like, I mean, it's going to have massive ramifications for the world. It's going to revolutionize the world. Yeah.
oh, the ex-wife.
Come on, Johnny.
I I've been there. I hear you, Johnny.
Yeah,
Now bad things that happened in your life that made you better. The deepest, darkest parts of life that you come out of and are like, you know what? That made me stronger. I
and
have
poorer.
those, and I can relate. I can
Yeah,
relate, Johnny.
yeah.
Um,
I
anyway,
learned so much. I gained so much wisdom from that time, and I lost so much money.
oh God,
uh,
I the money you pay to set yourself free, and then
yeah,
that survival status you get into, where when you've felt that, it helps you reevaluate like what you're doing,
yeah,
like how you handle your finances, what you really need to survive.
yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
I survived, but anyway, life's good
All right.
now.
Well, what do you think, Fritz? Shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, we can wrap it up. Travis couldn't join us. He said his flight got delayed from El Salvador, so he's still trying to travel back, but he would
Yeah.
like to join us. Maybe
Probably
next
gonna
time he
come
can
back to
tell us
see
about
ya.
his El Salvador trip and
Yeah,
Bitcoin being legal tender, not legal tender.
yeah. Well,
Interesting.
it'd be fun to check in with him, see how things were down there. I'm always envious of the guy. I'm like, you fucker, coming back to El Salvador, hanging out on the beach, you bugger. But you know, maybe next year I'll be able to join him as well. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you everybody for joining. Appreciate it. It's
Yep.
always fun having people on, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Good chat. Next time.
See
Bye.
y'all later. Bye.
Technical difficulties.